Parole Board is also present here this morning. But before we get the meeting started, I would ask that everyone in attendance, if you would please, put your phone on silent or vibrate, please. And for those of you that have an agenda, we will follow it as printed. For those that do not have a agenda, we will be speaking with our parole board this morning. We will also have Department of Corrections here to speak with us, and this will involve their community corrections that also includes probation and the parole division. And we will be hearing also from MDOC today in regards to parole also today. So at this time, we're not going to prolong this meeting. At this time, we would like to ask, I see Mr. Belk is here, and I thought I saw Miss Julia here also from the parole board. So if you all would please approach the podium, and we would like to ask some questions from the parole board. I'm sorry, parole board. Good morning. Thank you all for coming. I don't know if you all got the list of the questions that we would like to ask this morning, but it won't be too bad, I hope. But one of the things we would like to talk about, Chairman Belk, is that, you know, before, and I met with y'all before at some of y'all hearings, and one of the things that we both identify as an issue when it came to parole, and then when it came to setting people off for a certain amount of months or things like that, was housing. Was the fact that they couldn't verify, or there was no verified place for these individuals to be released from. And being that we don't release people homeless, that was one of the issues that we had when it come to the amount of people being denied parole at that time, because there was not a verified address that they could be released to. Has that problem been resolved? And if it has, could you explain how it's helping? If it hasn't, then can you explain that also?
It hasn't been totally resolved. It has improved immensely though. But it has. The number that come before us without the addresses in the system is still an issue. It's less of an issue than it was before. We're seeing fewer and fewer that we're having to set off and go seek addresses. We are finding too, though, that once we do set them off for not having the addresses, that it's just a matter of probably less than a month, if not even weeks, that they've gone back in, gotten addresses, and got them approved addresses and back in before us, and we've been able to proceed and parole them.
Okay.
So, still some coming before us in that way, but not as many as there were last time we had talked.
Okay.
It's dramatically decreased.
But would you agree, though, Chairman Belk, that being that this has been an ongoing issue, would it not help the process with you all if those individuals who you hadn't to set off, if those things was corrected prior to those people coming before the parole board, so that would be one less thing that you all will have to consider doing then, and having to go back, being that the caseload that you all have?
Yes. So that's the issue right there is, the ones that we do end up setting off for no address, it's either the addresses, failed to get in the system beforehand or didn't make their way to the correct person to put them in. But if they were put in ahead of time, that would dramatically reduce that issue.
Okay.
There would still be some, but not as many. You're still going to have some folks that, just don't have it.
Chairman, I'm sorry. Vice Chairman, since it says no, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a question. Have you seen the recidivism rates drop? That is something that I'm always interested in knowing. Can you give us an update on that?
I think some of the information I provided before the hearing to the chairman there will show that, compared to the last few years, the number of revocations hearings that we're having is dramatically decreased. It was when I first got here in 22, we were seeing probably about 250 revocation hearings a month. That has dropped down to below 200, 150, 200 range. Let's just call it 175 just for average. So the number of revocations coming before us has decreased. But we're still seeing the majority of those are for committing new crimes as opposed to technicals. Technicals probably account.
Do you have, as a follow-up, sir, do you have any thoughts as to why the recidivism rates have dropped?
In my opinion, it's because of the programs and the efforts being put in place by MDOC. I say this as a commissioner, I'll say it here in the committee, some of the programs and stuff, especially like alcohol and drug before were, either participation trophies or fluff. The programs now are of substance. I've gone and last time I was at South Mississippi Correctional Institute, we put together a group of inmates that were in the new MRI program and some that were in the pre-release academy. Didn't tell them who I was naturally, but we told them we were there to just gauge the programs and see if they were successful or a waste of time, type approach. There were 4 or 5 of us that met with them. And they're actually getting a lot of benefit out of that, especially a lot of the violent offenders, around anger management, taking on responsibility for, they're the reason they're incarcerated. It's not the world against them type, philosophy that they're getting. And I see that number dropping because of these programs before they're released, actually doing some good and setting them up for success. That's just my observation and personal opinion there. I don't have a lot of data, to support that, but.
Thank you, Senator Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just kind of an overview, how many current parolees are in the state of Mississippi?
I don't have that information. You'd have to get that from, I think, Nathan Blevins there. He might could.
Okay. Well, a follow-up to Senator Chasanal's question. You said the rate of recidivism is down. How are violent offenders, where would they be at in the percentages, if you know, of reoccurring offenders?
I'm trying to think if I have that breakdown there. I know that, overall, as far as the, MDOC population, about 1/3 are violent offenders, 2/3 are nonviolent. The ones that come back before us for revocations, I'm not so sure we've captured that. I've captured, we capture the ones that have come back, for new crimes committed while on parole, new crimes committed, convicted for crimes that were committed before they were on parole, these detainer situations and different things. But I don't have that breakdown. I can get that. I can work with MDOC to see if we can glean that for you.
Yeah, that'd be great. I was just kind of wanted to consider the percentage of parolees that commit allegedly a new crime. How many of those were crimes of violence as opposed to crimes of nonviolence? I was just kind of curious for myself. Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Belt, we like to know if we're doing a good job here in the legislature. Has any of the legislation that we've recently passed been beneficial to the parole board's work? And if so, can you tell us how?
Some of the legislation that came through this time was around, victim notifications and the different notifications we send out to agencies. Now, of course, we were already doing that. So, formalizing that into the legislation, it was good to have it formalized, but it was something we were already doing there. As far as, I can't think if there wasn't a.
Well, I think that we,
Could you speak into the microphone, please?
I'm so sorry. I mean, just regarding legislation and this conversation that I've had with several people in this room, but the Technical Violation Center regarding misdemeanor revocations is something that's going to need to be addressed next session that we've talked about. So that's not something that y'all have done, but it's something that I think needs to be cleared up and where there's some statute that is silent and it just, we need some clarification from the legislature on.
Yeah, there's several areas of opportunity now as far as yeah.
Well, as a former member of the parole board, I can tell you, I wish you every success and hope that we'll be able to work together to make your job easier. And so I look forward to hearing your suggestions for other things that we might be able to do to help you.
Is there any specific pieces of legislation you were, the wheels in my head are turning here trying to think of specific ones that got
Oh,
passed. this
you
last
don't
session.
have to give it to me right now, but I'm just saying,
no, I was just
we
thinking of any
welcome your
specific one.
input, Chairman Belt, and hope that we will continue to be able to work together.
Okay.
I want to ask, in regards to the question that Senator Chazanel asked, when she asked about the legislation, about 3 years ago, there was a piece of legislation out there, and I'm not sure what that bill number was, that allowed individuals to go to work and not necessarily have to report to their parole officer. That would be something that would be left up to the employer to do. So my question is, in regards to legislation that's built around helping people when they get out, when they find employment and gain employment, have you seen less individuals come back because of that type of legislation, or would that be a question that needs to be asked to MDOC?
Usually that comes up when we have a revocation hearing for someone that hasn't reported, and they use a scenario of, that they may be working in the timber industry and they have to be, Monday morning at 4 a.m. be in the woods, checking out their equipment, getting ready to work till dark and don't have time to report. We go back and reemphasize that is an option with their employer, to keep that from happening again. But again, we don't get involved in the that side of it enough to.
So these individuals, some are notifying you that they are working, but didn't know that piece of legislation was there.
Correct.
For them to, okay. So then we can agree that that's a breakdown on MDOC part, because I think that was some information that was supposed to be shared with those individuals when they leave, to notify them that, this is part of your probation that you can participate in.
Correct.
Okay. Senator Barrett, I saw you had your hand up, but I'm coming. I'll be getting with you just a second. My other question is presumptive parole. How is that working? Or how is that coming on?
Slow, but it's getting there. So since 2022, that's been on my radar. There are case plans being done now. A template put together for those. The discharge plan templates have been put together. It's just a matter of, personnel and being able to get those reviewed and documented that they've been reviewed is kind of the holdup right now on that. We are diligently working with MDOC to get that done. That is a high priority.
Thank you, Senator.
I did want to add, and I've shared this with you, but presumptive parole, those that would qualify if it was fully implemented, we review them separately now as it is. And I don't think that there is, the vast majority of those do get paroled, and usually it's the reasons that they wouldn't get paroled are reasons that would throw them out of the presumptive parole anyways. So while it's not fully implemented and that we're approving case plans and doing those types of things, I believe that this board is on a large scale paroling people that would qualify under the presumptive parole statute.
Yeah, that is correct. It's it not being fully implemented yet has not caused anyone not to be paroled that was parole eligible.
Thank you. Senator Barrett, you had a question?
Yeah, just to follow up to the statement earlier, you said that the law needed to be clarified as to misdemeanors and parole. Could you be a little bit with the TVCs, and could you be a little bit more specific about what needs to be clarified?
Yeah, so I guess to back up a step, you know, the parole and probation laws they differ as to where, you know, the length of time under probation, if you abscond for 6 months or longer, it's no longer a technical violation. Under parole, it still is, even if you abscond for 4 or 5 years. What was the other one there, Jim? Yeah, so if you commit a misdemeanor crime while on parole and are convicted of it, it's a technical versus a
Well, the
felony
statute is
conviction.
silent on it. It doesn't clarify.
Those two, parole and probation, even feedback we get from the agents in the field need to be synced up, or at least, you know, more in line with each other. And there are a few little, you know, issues there around the technical crimes that probably need to be addressed.
I have a question.
Thank you. Senator Hill, you have a question?
Yes, as a follow-up, I think what Ms. Norman and the chairman are saying is that the legislature needs to be clear on what a technical violation is with regard to parole, because we've recently had a court interpret it the same as probation, where it is silent on parole. So basically, if the parole board wants to revoke based on a misdemeanor like a domestic violence, a DUI, malicious mischief, long line of misdemeanors that can be violent, then we don't want them to be subject to the defendant's attorney filing a motion in court and overturning the parole board's decision, because our statute has ambiguity in it. And I think that's where they're going. They need to be able to do their job and know that what they're doing is going to stand. Would you agree, Ms. Norman, that's, I hope I've explained it right.
And we don't want to necessarily revoke every misdemeanor. Sometimes they're misdemeanors.
Right. They might be something clerical misdemeanor.
But sometimes the domestic misdemeanors are things, especially when it's somebody with a history of violence, that we need to have that authority.
Thank you. I have another follow-up question as well. And I think this was something we talked about too when I came over to the hearings with y'all as well, is that we was experiencing a significant number of those people who was being, I guess, resentenced for not paying the parole officers, as you know, failure to pay. I think we had talked about that, and we had also explained that concern with MDOC is that, you know, failure to pay should not be a condition of you not coming to see your probation officer. I think we had several people who would have abscond because, you know, if they missed that first one without being able to pay, surely they missed the second one, and now they feel like, you know, I missed 2 or 3, so no, let me go, and if they catch me, they catch me because I really didn't have the money. So are you all still seeing a lot of those cases?
It comes up occasionally, you know, like we said before, we will not and we have not revoked anyone solely for failure to pay. It's usually the situation they come before us is they have absconded because they haven't paid and that they were scared they would get revoked.
Yeah, I understand that you all want to, but you see them coming before you because they say that they absconded, and when they explain to you, when you ask the question why, it's because, well, I feel like I didn't have the money to pay, so therefore I didn't go.
Yeah, so we still occasionally see a few of those.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions by the members of this committee to the parole board? If Ms. Hawley, would you have any questions? Okay. All right, if not, thank you all for coming and sharing the information with us. Oh, I'm sorry, Miss Julie, I do have another question for you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I know that you have been paying attention to the legislation that we did when we started the pilot program that allowed individuals to get out and work every day. And recently, you know, we started it, well, we expanded it, I'm sorry. Have you tracked that lately? I know at one time you was kind of watching those individuals and tracking that some. And if you have, would you be willing to share with this committee how you feel like this is helping or not helping in regards to people getting out and staying out?
Well, my experience with the program is very limited, so there's not that many people, but I've got a couple that I track that I know were in that programming, and I go and see how they're doing. And from all accounts, from what I can tell, they're doing very well. And it's a program that could be expanded. And from my seat, if you have a job, you already have money saved, and you're transitioning straight into going to work every day like you already have been, and you've got somewhere to live, obviously you statistically are going to perform better on parole. And that's been my experience.
Okay, thank you. Okay. If we have anyone here from the Department of Corrections with the community corrections, specifically in probation and parole, if you all would please come to the podium, please. Good morning.
Morning.
Commissioner, if you would identify yourself for the committee and please.
Yes, sir. If I could, I'd like to mention a couple of things first. One is, we're really proud that our website and
Commissioner,
Governmental Standards and
Commissioner.
Excellence Award won
Excuse me,
for the best
excuse me.
website. So we're proud of that.
Excuse me.
Okay, in Borough County, Commissioner of Corrections, Mississippi. And I have some guests with me that I would like to be presenters, and I was going to mention that too. And we have with us today Dr. Mary Ann Ross, our Chief of Staff right here. And we have also with us the Deputy Commissioner of Institutions, John Hunt. We also have with us Deputy Commissioner for Finance, Derek Garner. And also we have our Deputy Commissioner for Programs, Kelly Christopher, and for Community Corrections, Nathan Blevins. And so I hope today that we can answer all your questions, and good. So if you'd like a little overview, we'd like to first mention that our prisons are stable. When I came here in 2020, then we had to go in the apartment with someone with a shotgun behind us. There's no more shotguns. Prisons are safe. We encourage you all to come see us and visit to our prisons. We also have with us our two regional superintendents, Mark McClure, who is for the Northern Region, Region 1, and he's over the prisons in the northern region, and also Superintendent Brand Huffman, who is the superintendent at SMCI, and he's superintendent director over all the southern prisons. And Mark McClure is the superintendent for Parchment. And in bringing them with us today, then I want them to participate and answer any questions you might have, because their feet are on the ground and they're out where it's happening and they know what's going on. And I would first like to ask if it's okay for John Hunt to continue to talk about the gang situation we have, because he was former director of CID and he is now the director of corrections for institutions. And just to mention that as a start, if that's okay. Is that okay to do it that way?
Well, Commissioner, that'll be fine, but I think the gist of this meeting this morning was to not discuss the whole entire Department of Corrections. The task before us this morning is to gain as much knowledge and information as we possibly can about probation and/or parole.
Good.
Those are the areas that we're focused on here this morning, is probation and parole, how it's working, how it's not working. Overview over on those specific things, and not an overview over each particular facility or anything like that. So we just want to stick to the task at hand this morning, that is probation and parole.
Well, good. We wanted to come fully prepared for any question or anything you might ask. So with that being said, if it's okay, I would like to ask Deputy Commissioner Nathan Blevins for Community Corrections to come up and answer your questions.
Thank you.
Morning, Senator,
Morning.
everyone. I'm gonna have I got my 3 regional directors here today, because I figured you have some questions that specific to what they're doing in their regions and areas, so we can answer them. I'm gonna have Jason come up with me to address any of those issues. He's the CCD for the Central Mississippi, if that's okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so what we passed out is just kind of an overview of with the questions that you proposed to us with the answers, and I hope we've answered them to the best of our knowledge. If there's something else that you want us to address, we will gladly do it. It's one thing that I want to address specifically that was mentioned earlier when parole board, is that we don't recommend revocations for non-payment, because we understand, and I go to the judges conference, they're not going to revoke people just for not paying money. And that's been said time and time again. So usually what happens is, if someone's not paying, you usually got a new crime also coupled with it during the revocation. As far as working with their employers and not having to report, I actually put in place when that bill came out, and I maybe was mistaken, but I thought I provided you a copy of it, where each person that comes into the office actually signs and get a copy of this bill, letting them know if they're working, that they do not have to come in and report. The employer call in, let them know they're working, and then we consider them report. And I have several copies here where offenders have actually signed them. So we are getting the word out. Is it perfect? By no means. I've been doing this 20 plus years, and probably the first person with law enforcement background to be deputy commissioner. I mean, the job's not, it's not easy, but it's doable if you got the right tools and resources to do what you need to do. So I'm gonna go through the slide and we'll discuss.
Mr. Blevins, before we move to the slide, based on what you just said, that you have signed, where individuals have signed acknowledging that they have been made aware of that particular piece of legislation in your other offices, in other areas, are they doing the same thing?
Yes, sir. So what happened, Senator, is that when we developed this, I sent it out to all 3 CCDs. And I made it mandatory that they post it in each office. It's also a part of their intake. So when someone comes in and they sit down, they tell them when they have to report, what day they have to report, they have to sign this, acknowledging that they understand that they can do this. So it's out in every office, and I made certain of that because I followed up with each director when I did it to make sure that it's in the office.
Okay, my follow-up to that question is then, I understand that it's out there, but my question again is, are they following it? And I guess, are you tracking to make sure they're followed? Because the individual that comes through those particular areas, maybe, are they sending you these sheets on all of them, all of the people that's coming through there to let you know that they are actually following what it is, or this just a random, that are they just sending you random ones? I'm
Well,
asking, how are you fact checking to make sure?
Okay, what I
that-
do in my monthly staff meetings, this is a monthly topic. I bring it up every meeting. Are they signing, are y'all still signing these documents? Are y'all making them aware that they can still do this? Now I can that's why I brought the director, because they can tell you and speak specifically to if they're doing this every day and if they're keeping up with the document.
Okay, so if I came over and said, okay, I want to see all of those individuals who came through your office, would you be able to show me that all of those individuals that came through was able to sign that? Or when you have your meetings and you ask the question, is that yes, I do it, or is the question, I need the paperwork to prove that you have been doing this versus a verbal answer that you may get?
I do not get those, Senator. I don't ask for them. Quite frankly, that'll be a lot of paperwork. I bring it up in the staff meeting, but that's something that we can do. If it's just a matter of making sure everybody signed it, we can fact check and check every intake to make sure everybody.
Well, I think that would be the only way to make sure this being done, if we're going to offer that intake, and if there's not a paper trail to back this up, then we don't know if they're doing this 1 out of every 5, 1 out of every 10. We don't know, but I would like, if 10 people came through intake, then I'd like for 10 people to have that opportunity to know that this is, that this is being made available to them.
Yes, we can do that.
So would you agree that if we did that, then we can make sure that we are doing things consistently?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And we're doing it on every case and not just picking and choosing who we decide to and not?
Absolutely. We can check it. I'm confident that it's being done, but we can check it. We can check every document when they come in the report to make sure that it's being done.
And the reason I'm asking this is not to bash MDOC, but as Chairman Belka explained with the parole board, you may have some individuals who are working in logging companies and things like this, and they start to work at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. And being that, we had the hot summers and things like we had, and so these people may not be able to come in and see that probation or parole officer, but their employer can call them and let them know. So, and that's the reason why I'm asking, is to make sure that when those individuals are released and they are finding work and they want to work, and we're doing our best to make sure that they stay on the job and they stay active and taxpayers. That's the reason why I'm asking.
Absolutely. You make a good point. And that's what we want to do. We want people working, because if they're working, then they're not committing crimes. So, anything we can do to make it better. I mean, we're not saying it's perfect, so we will listen to any advice, and that's something we can start doing just to verify that it's being done.
Okay. Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you have any numbers on how many are reporting through their employer currently?
No, ma'am, I did not get that number. We could provide it.
Okay, we need that because we need to see how many are taking advantage of that piece of legislation that allowed that to happen. Because we need to make sure that that's going how we wanted it to go.
Thank you, Senator Hill. You may proceed, Mr.
Okay, so in the slide, I think one of the questions that was asked was how many people on parole, and you wanted it by regions. So in Region 1, if you'll note, it's 2,320 in Region 1. Region 2, you have 2,577. Region 3 have 2,184, which brings you to a total of 7,081 people as of the September report. Also, services provided was one of the questions posed as well. What do we do in community corrections to assist folks that's coming out of prison? Not only do we do GED prep, we're in the process now with starting a school where we'll be offering, high school diplomas in the probation and parole office. We transport inmates when they get released from prisons back to their county, whether it's North Mississippi to South Mississippi. We find housing if they need housing. We have program coordinators that we refer them to help them if they need a job. They have connections throughout the community where they can refer them, or as jobs. We do transport in-state, out-of-state. When they get out, if they don't have their benefits, program coordinator have the resources to help them restart their benefits. So, and we make sure they have all the proper documentation. So if they release from prison without their social security card or ID, we provide transportation to help them get that.
Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there any way that we can make sure that when somebody is incarcerated in MDOC and they are one that's eligible for parole or earned time release or however they're getting out, that we go ahead and get those documents as soon as those people get placed in the custody of MDOC, so that we're not having to provide that on the back end? Because I know that I've had to help several through the MHP get their driver's license, social security, and birth certificate, because you can't, they get in a catch-22, like, well, we won't give you this if you don't have this. And so they got to get a birth certificate, a social security card, and then driver's license. That state ID that they come out with doesn't get them anywhere. That's what I've found working with people, friends and family that have come out. And we need to create a policy. We don't have to do a law for it, but we need to create a policy that when they get in, that personnel need to go ahead and get that and have it in a file. So if that person's eligible for release, they can hand it to them, and we're not spending money transporting them here and yonder once they got out, and we're not calling up there, bothering the people that are trying to work with that. So I think that'd be some smart moves to get that done ahead of time.
That's a good question. That's something we've been working on for the past 2-3 years, and the commissioners put things in place where I think it's better. There's some still to get out that we have to help get their documentations, but that's something Deputy Commissioner Kelly, that falls under her responsibility. So I'm sure she'll be glad to address that when she comes up.
Senator. Council.
Well, I think it's still in the early stages. It's something the commissioners putting together, the school within DOC.
You authorized us with legislation to have our own school district. We're in the process of doing that. And the one place we want the school district to work, because we have those programs already in our prisons, is in the probation parole office. So we're moving that direction so that inmates can get their high school diploma at the probation parole office. Excuse me, they'll be issued a computer. The computer will also be it'll be virtual, and the teacher will be virtual, but they'll be able to go to the probation office, report there, and do their work, and then do it from home, and ultimately get their high school diploma. And so that way they don't have to chase it all down. We'll have that for them. In your previous question, Kelly Christopher's here, that she does this to get the documents that they need to have so that we don't have to chase them down. We made great headway in getting driver's license and the social security numbers and birth certificates and so forth. And he mentioned delivery, no more buses, no more so forth. When you get out of prison, we're gonna get you home and not be left on the street like it's been happening in the past. So thank you.
Thank you.
Senator, will you turn your mic on, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. I asked that because you mentioned GED prep. What's the follow-up on the GED prep? what's your success rates of the inmates actually getting a GED?
We're not quite there yet. We're authorized to have a superintendent of schools. We have already advertised for that. We have to have a superintendent and form a whole school system like you would have in a county. And so we will have that in Department of Corrections. That was authorized with legislation a year ago. And so then we will have our own school district. And so that's being developed now, should be done, we hope by this winter, so that we can be offering those.
Yeah, but you've been doing GED all the time, right? So what's your record of the ones that have gone through the prep, the ones that have successfully done the prep? What's the follow-up on that?
The ones that in our system that's,
Do you have refer them to a GED center or somebody that's actually giving the GED certification?
I'm gonna get to the lady that takes care of all that to come and address you with that.
Senator, I've broken it down by facility. The numbers are not fabulous. They're not great. People who complete the high set, they study for it, they get ready for it, but it's typically the math section they don't get through. So far since July 1st, we have 13 at CMCF, 15 at MSP, 19 at SMCI. And we've got about 120 people ready to test. Does that answer your question?
Who tests them?
We have certified facilitators at each institution. And sometimes we share. If CMCF doesn't have a certified tester, they'll come from Walnut Grove or Marshall County to come and test our guys.
They can actually get their GED.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. That answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Senator Hill, recognized for a question.
I guess my question is, why do we need to create a school district? I mean, why, we can't just offer tutoring, GED prep? What is the purpose of going through all the bureaucracy to create a school district within MDOC?
We did that so that we would be able to have our own schools and our own teachers and our own programs without bringing folks from the outside. And in many cases, we felt it to be more efficient, and it was actually cheaper for us because some of our schools are taught by inmates who have credentials to do such, because it's part of preparing them for reentry back into the community. And therefore, the teacher is, 30 cents an hour rather than having to hire a teacher to come in and do it. Plus the inmate gets the experience. So then that's good for him too, but it's a money saver. And so a lot of prison systems across the land have their own school districts so that they can do it that way.
So we needed legislation for you to be able to allow inmates to teach and facilitate.
We already have the legislation.
I understand, but we needed it for that to happen.
I don't think so. No, ma'am, because it doesn't matter with a GED thing. It matters that they can pass a test for the GED. So however we get them prepared for the test is okay. So we just get them to pass the test and use inmate teachers, and most all our programs.
Because that's all you need is to pass a GED. I wouldn't think that we needed a whole school system created in the prison to get GED done, to teach basic math and what all's on the GED. But however it works, maybe it's working in other states. I'm just not aware of it. Thank you, Mr. Kane.
Thank you. Senator Jackson, you recognized for a question.
Just on the education, are there any plans or ways now that inmates could get certifications beyond their high school diploma, maybe college?
I'm sorry, I missed that first part.
Are there any ways or plans to allow inmates to obtain higher level degrees?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, everyone's allowed to continue their education. I know in community corrections,
Don't forget, we have the New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. We have 100 students in class at Parchment that are getting a BA degree. And so we do offer and work with community colleges, and we work with MagCorps as well, so that we can have higher education, because the more education, the better. So we do have those programs. And we have our graduation coming up with another group from New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. They get a BA degree, just like it's accredited like Ole Miss or like Mississippi State. So it's a real deal. So yes, we do have viable college education programs.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hill.
I wanted to go back to the parole and probation. The numbers that you're showing on this page for Region 1, 2, and 3, is that just parole? That doesn't include probation?
No, ma'am, that's just parole.
So
'cause I think the
probation's
question
a
was-
separate set of
Yes,
numbers that
ma'am.
you don't have on this sheet.
Right, I think the
Um,
question was just asking for the
Okay,
parole
and
numbers.
as far as the people that are managing, those that are going to see their parole officers, what is the average caseload for those that are trying to see the inmates and let them check in and be drug tested or what's the average caseload?
Last we checked, the average caseload, I know in your southern district, their caseloads are around 200. Central Mississippi, I think they're around 120. So,
And so how many more would you need to get to the national recommended number? How many more employees would you need to get to the recommended number of how many each ought to be managing?
I think if we can just fill what we got, it will put us where the national numbers are.
So how many more do you need to
We have
fill?
about probably 200 vacancies.
200 vacancies.
So if
So
I
you,
could just get those filled, then we will.
so you basically need 200 more officers to see inmates to,
We're talking about custody, care, and control.
Right.
To be effective.
well, I'm talking about when they're already out, like whether they're electronic monitored, they're coming in to check in with their parole or probation officer. That's what I'm concerned about, is how many are they managing? Because many times, what we've seen in the state, when they abscond
Mhm.
and they hadn't seen them in 6 months or 9 months, I guess the question comes around to, if we had more people and they weren't trying to manage so many people, what do they actually do when they abscond? Because typically when we see them, they've already committed a new crime, many times a high profile crime. So that's what I'm concerned is, how many do we need on the outside? And what do we need to do with this electronic monitoring? Because many times when they're picked up for a new major violent crime, they've had that on, it hadn't been working, it hadn't been checked, or we don't know where they are. So that's kind of a concern. These high profile crimes that we've had in the state, it's all connected to that. And so what happens when they actually do abscond? Is it MDOC going looking for them, or is it the local law enforcement they notify? How does that work?
So the way that works, once someone absconds, we submit a packet to MSP, and they put on NCIC, notifying all law enforcement that we're looking for this person. Our agents will go out and follow up, search for them, check, the last known addresses, make contact with other places that they know, and search for them. And usually after that, with everything going on, by that time, they're usually picked up by another agency that notifies that the person's in custody. So, but one of the things that you mentioned about the GPS, and I would like to share, is that, we're in the process now, and I can't really get deep into it, but we're requiring whoever gets this GPS contract, they're gonna be doing pretty much everything that we're doing. So that's gonna free up about 60 of our people right there that we could use to do other things. So it'll be solely the provider responsibility to do all this legwork and administrative type work that our agents are tired of doing. So that's gonna help out tremendously.
Mr. Blevins, and a follow-up question to Senator Hill's question about the amount of agents that you have working caseloads. Do you all still have a number of parole and probation officers working inside the facilities because you all are still short-staffed there?
What we do have now, Senator, we're no longer working in the prisons, okay? What we are doing is the transports, like I mentioned, out of state, in state. in the hospital details.
So if you all are working other details other than to making sure that these individuals are being able to work the caseloads, wouldn't we also agree that your problem is not necessarily staffing level, but because you're having to be pulled away to work in other areas as well?
I think it's coupled with both. I think we're still short-staffed, but at the same time, there's things that, I mean, the institution just, they rely on us that we have to do because of our expertise. And that's things such as shakedowns in the prison. I mean, that's not gonna go away. I mean, they depend on us for that. We have certified law enforcement officers that go to a 12-week rigorous academy to train type stuff. So, you know, that's something we're gonna have to continue to do. I mean, we have multiple vehicles, so we have to, in that nature. But I think it's kind of covered with both, Senator. But to answer, I guess to answer your question, if we had the staff, then we probably wouldn't have to be, you know, doing as much if staffing was up in the prison. All kind of stuff.
Okay, and I'll follow up with another question. Senator Fillingham, you recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of questions, actually. What role do the parole officers play in connecting the individuals to services like employment, assistance, housing, drug treatment, those types of things? And how do you track the success of those individuals working their way through the system?
So what we do, Senator, when they're released, they have a job, we refer them to our program coordinator. We have program coordinators.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. What we do when they're released to community corrections, they're referred to our program coordinators. We have program coordinators all throughout the state, okay? And they monitor them, where they work, whether they need housing, and they track that monthly, and they turn it in to us on the monthly report. So we have those numbers every month, as if someone's working, if they're looking for work, or if they need housing, or if it's substance abuse, what have you. They keep up with that information monthly.
And that gets reported to whom?
It gets reported to me, then we submit a report to the commissioner.
Okay. So do you consider what you're doing so far successful? I mean, how do you measure success? What's the goalpost, and are you meeting those?
I think we are, because you're not gonna get everybody everything they're looking for, but just looking at my number, we are doing good as far as helping people, especially with the job aspect. I know exactly from where I'm from in the 16th district, there's so much manufacturing going on in the Golden Triangle area. People are looking for folks that are on supervision because they come to us and say, you know them better than we do. You know, we can't just say we're not hiring people because they got felons no more. Everybody's a felon. So that's not on the application anymore. So now you just got to pick, and you know, they call us to decide what kind of person this person is. Is he reporting? Is he doing what he's supposed to do? We're looking at hiring. So they rely on us for that kind of information.
So what percentage would you say, the ones you're seeing, was it a 50% success rate, 70%?
I don't think we're quite at 50, but I think we're probably around 40. I think, and it's getting better. It's getting better.
Excellent. So of this, back to the school district, you were saying you created the new school district. Are there daily attendance dollars, like MAP dollars, that flow to those individual students in the school district?
I'm really following the probation parole. Deputy Commissioner Kelly Christopher, she's gonna come up after me.
Well, I'll just ask her the question now, if that's okay.
Okay, that's fine.
Sure.
That you're requesting?
No, my question is, do you receive dollars? Because I mean, in my way of thinking, we're already paying for each of these individuals who are in custody, right? I mean, the state is footing the entire bill for their stay there. So then my question is, if we're layering on top of the 28 or 30,000 or whatever it is we're paying per individual inmate, are we also paying the $7,000 for the MAP quotient to each of the individual students in the school district?
That's a good question. We only have youthful offenders that are actually in that school district, which is why we had to have a separate school district, was for the juveniles. And that's a regular K through 12 school system with a principal and hired teachers and a school counselor and all that. But I'm not sure about the dollar amount connected to that program.
That would be interesting if you could provide maybe to the chairman, because I know in most school districts here that we create, there's a local component where the local tax dollars, the ad valorem taxes are paying a local amount for that school system. Then you have the state dollars, and then you even have federal dollars on top of that, depending on
Yep.
low income, free reduced meals, that type of thing. So I'm just curious, if we're creating a new school district within MDOC's, umbrella, how much are we paying and who's paying it? That would be interesting to know.
We are, as far as I know, we're paying it, but as long as we've had youthful offenders, we've had a school district. So it's not a new school district. But I could get you the number if I.
So in the old system, the dollars would flow from their individual home districts to MDOC to pay?
I don't know. I've only been here a little over a year. I don't know. I
Okay.
don't know that answer.
No, that's fair. But maybe that's something we could figure out.
Sure.
Okay. I'd appreciate you doing
Sure.
that, following
No
up with us.
problem. Good, thank you.
If I make a speak to this behalf on the school district issue thing, the school district thing is we're a non-LEA right now. We get Title I funding. So we're going to a LEA by the law. So they're still getting the Title I funding for these things. The school district we're trying to create is where if you already have certain levels in your education, you can get a high school diploma quicker than you could get a GED. So that is the true premise of the school district going into the community corrections field. So if somebody has one more class to take, we got this school district out here with the community correction. They just didn't take that one class with the laptop right in front of them, and they got a high school diploma. So that is the true premise of the school district, to build that up. And the funding still is the Title I funding. If they qualify for Title I funding, that is the source.
So is the dollar amount the same as the MAP?
Yes, yes, sir.
So essentially
It's
7,000.
still coming from MD.
MD, so around $7,000.
Yes, sir.
That's what the state is paying. And is there any local supplement that comes with these school districts?
Well, you can get grants and other things that we do have grants like we do with our educational right now too. So there's other things you can explore bigger wise when you become an LEA with grant wise money, other things also
So how many students do you have enrolled in your school's system?
in the actual. So the system is not in place yet. Though I said this is an exploration. So there's no kids in school in the community correction at all. So we do have the U program and everything else in the actual facilities. I can't speak to those with your numbers, but those things are like in the U, we have some at SMCI. They're actually still at that age to get a high school diploma.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You get Senator Fillingham. 1 second, Senator Hill. I do recognize. Okay, I think there was some confusion on this school that we're talking about, that commissioner said that the legislature, there was a bill passed for y'all to do that. I can't find it.
Yep.
Number one. Number two, I think I've been chair of corrections now for about 6 years, and I can't remember any legislation that we've passed that came through my committee that addresses MDOC having a school. Would this be something that's done in the workforce development bill or whatever? I mean, if you can find a bill or something that we can reference to, because
Yeah, we'll get you the
Like
bill.
Senator Fillingham,
I know it's in the
you know.
last couple of years that bill had been implemented. I will definitely get you that bill. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but I'll get you that bill. All it changes was from a non-LEA to a LEA. And that way you have to create a school district to be a LEA.
okay, thank you. Senator Hill.
Yeah, just as a follow-up to what Senator Fillingham was asking, in the past, you've not ever had any local ad valorem taxes come into MDOC for the students, correct?
We have funding for our Title I that comes into.
But Title I's federal funds.
correct.
So that's coming through Mississippi Department of Education
Correct, and that's
to MDOC.
correct. And that's it.
So with the LEA, y'all are wanting, apparently, the MAE, what used to be MAEP is now whatever this new formula is, to also flow to the students, to the youthful offenders.
Correct. It's the same way. So if they're in JPS school district and they go to Madison, that money follows them. So the funding is going to follow them no matter what school district you're in. So wherever the student go, the funding level goes with them.
So, but you haven't gotten any of that per student funding yet from MDE as far as the funding formula. All you got so far is Title I,
Correct.
but you're trying to get the per student amount
Yes, ma'am.
based on the funding formula.
Yes, ma'am.
For the LEA.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hill. Any other questions? Right. Okay, you may proceed.
Okay, so let's see where we left off. So next we're talking, the supervision fees was one of the other questions that was posed to us. The supervision fee on regular caseloads, as you can see, is $55 a month. For your ISP, GPS is $88 a month. And you can see where actually on the statute 47,749, where the money actually goes from each one of those accounts. Supervision fees collected. FY 2023, regular caseload, we collected $7,756,387. ISP fees, $961,631.29 for a total, right, $8,718,19. FY 2024, regular supervision fees were $7,887,903. ISP was $1,038,179 for a total of $8,926,083. Any questions on the supervision fee collection?
Yes, sir. On the page before where you have our statute listed as 47-7-49. 91% of the fees collected go to Community Corrections Special Fund. Can you explain to me what's the purpose of that special fund?
I will refer to the administrative finance. He handles all that.
So the 91% of the collected to go to community correction are special funds. So, you have the general fund funding and you have the special fund funding. So the special fund funding is money that's generated from the supervision fees itself. So those particular fees goes in the next page, you'll see it's pretty much to salaries and things like all of those small things that community correction needs. So majority of that funding funds the community correction salaries that does the collection for the $55.
Okay. So the percentage, so 91% of the monies collected can go, if it's not being used right now, but can possibly be used for salaries.
It already is used towards salaries.
91% of it.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Okay, so if this 91% is used for salaries and we're short, we're just trying to make it make sense.
What do you mean short?
I mean, we're short of officers according to Mr. Blevins.
So you have two separate fundings for community correction. You have the special funding and you have general fund. So we have salary dollars that comes for specifically for collection of the $55. Then the state also funds ourselves for general officers also. So it's kind of a split between the two, general fund and special fund funding for the salaries.
So what you're telling me is that the monies that the state allocate for MDOC, when y'all ask for your budget that includes salary, this money is part of what you're asking for?
Yes, sir.
Okay, but what I'm looking at here is a 2-year where you have 2023 and 2024 total collected, roughly about $200,000 difference. So my question is, when you request your budget from the state, do you include roughly $8 million that you already have? Because you're looking at a total of about $8 million that's been collected a year that you can use as part of your salaries for probation and parole. Is that not correct?
I think you're losing me.
So you can actually budget so you can actually put in your budget, if you ask the state, we're just gonna use a hypothetical number of $50 million for MDOC, right?
Right.
Based on the information that I have here, if you ask in the state for $50 million, you can safely say that, okay, we're gonna have 58 million for salary because we're collecting about $8 million a year on,
No, sir. So when we ask for the budgets, if I ask for 20 million, I'm asking for salary, 10 million of that ask is special fund. The other 10 million is general fund for your 20 million. I'm not going over the 20 million to add additional funding to it.
but if you're collecting annually about $8 million, as a former mayor, the reason why I'm asking is because when we had to set our budget, we based it off the revenue that was collected the prior year. So we wouldn't over budget or under budget ourselves. So my question is, how are you factoring in this money that you're collecting from community, from those fees that are being collected to help with filling those potential vacancies that you may have in community?
So it's a two-folder. As you staff up, that number increases. So if more staffing comes in, not only now it goes from 8
I
million,
understand that
it
that
goes from
goes
10
up.
million. So
Understand that that number goes up, but what I'm saying is that if you can say that for 2 years, or we're running somewhere, I mean, you don't have to use this whole $8 million just to be on the safe side, but couldn't we safely say that, okay, we're collecting a steady stream of $6 million a year in community correction. So out of this $6 million that we're collecting every year, we can safely say that we can hire X amount of people to take care, I mean, that this money could handle in addition to the money that we're asking from the state.
once again, the funding that we get of the 8 million goes towards their salary. So I guess I'm misunderstanding your question. So if we're getting 8 million already, it's going to yourself. So if we get another 2 million, it's going to the next guy's salaries. So I don't know where so if I get $2 more million, we're gonna hire $2 million more worth of staffing, if that makes sense. So if I only got 8 now, I cannot spend another 2 million unless we make it with new staffing.
Okay. I don't think we're understanding each other, but we'll talk about this later.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Senator Hill. Your hand was recognized for a question.
I think I got it answered.
Thank you.
May I proceed or we?
Okay, Sergeant Blevins, you mentioned before we got to where we were about the anchor monitoring. Can y'all tell me how that's going?
I think it's out for, I guess, the last, what you call bid. I'm not in the procurement part of it, but I think it's in its final phases.
Okay. What were some of the issues that you was having before?
With the GPS that we're currently using?
Yes.
Just the feedback I've been getting from agents in the field is just, you have some late reporting on notification being notified. Some of the equipment that comes in, I guess your bracelets or whatever straps, they wouldn't no good. Delayed responses to things such as drifts, and basically what that is you're showing someone in an area when they actually then drifted outside of it. So which can be a real danger, especially when someone's out probably in the act of committing a serious crime. So, and that's just to name a few.
Okay. And I know we've been all over the place with this hearing this morning. But for time's sake and things like that, is it possible for you or someone with you or with MDOC this morning to just walk me through a general intake process? To explain the interview, what's expected, what happens, you know, even with technical and other violations. That's been, you know, that's been a grave concern of mine for a while, is the intake process.
Yes, sir.
And I feel like that's where a lot of things are not happening at, and that's why we have the ending that we have, or the outcome that we have, is because of our intake. So I'm asking, can someone just walk me through an intake process?
Sure. And this is community corrections intakes you're referring to, right?
Yes.
Basic role. Sure. I'm gonna have Jason Carney who deal with it. He can explain the whole process for you.
Yes, sir. So what happens is we set them up for an appointment. They come in, they sit down with the agent. They then go through the process of filling out an assessment. The assessment gives us an idea how to supervise them, whether they need to come in, possibly come in quarterly, if they're low, if they're moderate, once a month. If they're a moderate high to high, they may have to be seen twice a month.
Can you, excuse me for interrupting, but can you give me without using any names or anything, can you just, if there's a conversation between the person that's giving the interview and the person that's coming in? I mean, can you give me more specifics than what you're giving me now is what I'm asking?
Yes, sir. We sat down, or when I did intakes, I set them down. I went over the terms, the conditions that either the court or the pro board had set forth, make sure they understood it. Ask them if they had any questions. If they didn't have any questions, they would then sign their intake package, which would include reporting, their financial obligations, and then,
So, okay, let's try to make this a little bit more sense. Explain to me, if you were talking to a Mr. Jones right now, who was a person that was sitting in front of you at your intake process, how would this conversation or how would this intake process go right now? How would you talk to Mr. Jones? I mean, can you actually walk me through a step where you're actually talking to someone that's involved in the intake process?
yes, sir.
If as though you was having a real conversation with them like right now.
Okay, Mr. Jones, you've been convicted of this crime. The sentence you were given was 10 years with all 10 suspended, 5 years on probation, with the 5 years on unsupervised. Your fine that the court gave you was $2,500 to be paid at a rate of $75 a month, as ordered by the court. Then they would have another list like you're to report. The court has ordered you to report once a month, to be randomly drug tested, to seek employment if you're not employed. And if if he's able to work, if he's got any, I would ask him if he's got any, do you have any history of drug usage? When was your recent drug usage? When did that occur? We would go, and based off that, then I may set him up for an appointment with our treatment coordinator, our program coordinator, for treatment options. Based off the conversation he would have with them, they may, it just may be at some outside meetings, or it may be some more intensive inpatient. Once that was taken care of, basically just make sure he understood when he had to come in and report, when, what their office hours were. If he was working already, then we would work around his schedule. If the employer did not, now, part of our intake is that employer reporting form. If he does, or if they do not utilize that, or he doesn't want to utilize that, we would make arrangements about him being able to come in the office to report.
Okay. When y'all let them know about the employer, do you think that it's not important to find out who their employer is and notify the employer yourself and it's like, hey, if, you know, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but as a condition, then you can report to me the hours that this gentleman is working, the drug test that's required, and also deduct from their payroll their supervision fee that they would have to pay me, so that there's no reason for this person to come and see, to come to the probation office. Is that being said as part of your intake process?
It's explained to them that they have this option.
I know it's
But,
explained to
but-
them that they have the option, but is it explained to them detailed enough so that they may understand what's available to them? And if community probation and parole is about helping those individuals stay out and keep employment, do you not think that it's important to help them by notifying their employer as to their options?
Now, we have not taken the extra step of notifying the employer, but yes, the individual is notified as to what their options are. As far as reporting, utilizing their employer to report, you know, providing check stubs, you know, part of it is if they've drug tested, anything like that.
Any questions by anyone on this committee before we proceed? Okay. I do have another question. When we talk about payments, non-payments, partial payments, those type of things, what happens when those individuals come and there are some payment challenges? How you are responding to that?
Well, what we do, Senator, if someone comes in and they can't pay their fees, first we sit down and talk to them, see if they're having some kind of hardship. You know, if they not able to pay, then we'll let them work with them and let them try to double up next month. Okay, if that's not an option, we have what's called waivers. So if you come in and you just on hard times and don't have a job, then we can waive your supervision fees, where you don't have to pay for that month or up to 3 months. We also do suspensions. So if you're just falling short, whether you got bills or whatever, you can make payments to get caught up throughout the month. And those who just can't pay, we do community service. I'm sure you've seen folks picking up trash throughout the state. Those are the people who just can't pay. So what happens with that, if you get somebody out on Saturday morning to pick up trash for free, then they tend to go find a job by the next week, because you'll call and be like, look, I'm working. So we work with them. We do everything we can to try to help them. And there's just some people who are not going to pay. So, and that's, you know, it's like I said earlier, the judges are not going to revoke them for that. So that's just part of the supervision collection that you're literally just having to eat.
Senator Barrett?
Have you found that because judges will not revoke for, and I practice criminal law and they don't revoke them for that in my district, certainly. Have you found because they aren't revoked for not paying fees or fines or any other monetary amounts, have you found that the collections have reduced?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's just money you can't get. You know, so you try to be proactive with people like that. And that's why it's important to have enough staff where you can sit down and talk to people and then try to explain to them the importance of working and doing your due diligence, you know, so you won't be a burden on the state. So those are the people you really want to spend your time with, because you got folks that's gonna work, gonna pay, do everything they're supposed to do. So you're allowed to take the attention away from them and focus on the people that needs the attention.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Barrett. Any other questions? You may proceed. Are you done or you have some?
I mean, if you have any, no other questions, I think we've covered everything. I mean,
I do have
payment.
maybe a couple more questions. One is regards to your offices being closed with notices on the door that we're closed when you have individuals that may come by, said, hey, I've been by 2 or 3 times and they're closed.
Mhm.
Are you all making any efforts? Or do you use any type of communications to notify individuals that, hey, we're out of office or I'm out of office today, or the office will be closed from 8 to 5 or 8 to 12 or whatever the hours may be? Because we do realize a lot of these people have transportation challenges. And so if there's already those challenges out there before them, wouldn't you think that it would be better if they would be notified in advance that the offices will be closed? Because
Yes, so what we try to do, we try to stay on top of that, what the officers do in a situation, because you have some districts that be in court year round, and you may not only have 2 or 3 people in the office. So what they'll do is put a note on the door saying, we're out working court, please come back at this time, or contact this supervisor at this number so we can set you up to come back and report at a different time.
but I've already had to hitchhike a ride to your office to find out that your office is closed. Now, what do I do? So now I got.
What you doing, what I've done, Senator, when I was an agent in those situations, my number is there. So if someone comes in and supposed to report, they call me and I say, hey, look, we're in court. You're good. Come back next report day.
I
We'll catch
understand.
up.
I understand that there's information on the door when I get there.
Mhm.
But we're in an age now to where we can mass email or text or whatever it is prior to. So while we're not using that technology, because I'm sure that you have that person's number or a number where you can reach that person at, correct? So my question is why we're not using this in advance to notify individuals that, hey, the office will be closed today. If you have any questions or concerns, you can call this number. Because I get those notifications all the time on things that's going on. And we know that probably 95% of the people who are on probation or parole have access to some type of device where they can be reached at. So my question is, leaving a note on the door may be a good thing for the person that lives next door. But the person that's got to hitchhike a ride there and not knowing it, and then got to find the ride back or inconvenience somebody to bring them to that office and now have to just turn around and go back. My question is, can we not use the technology that's available to us to notify individuals on the days that our offices are going to be closed?
Absolutely, we can. I think in most of your cases, Senator, when some of the offices are closed, some of them be like last minute. I refer to the out-of-state transports. I mean, we do transports every day. I mean, like to Ohio, Texas, all over the state. So sometimes it's just short notices when they do it. But when we have ample time, say I know next week that it's a holiday, or we're going to be closed, where I can notify my caseload, hey, we're going to be closed on Tuesday next week. You don't have to report.
And I'm not just asking for the people that may have a hardship, but I'm asking for that individual that may be working and choose not to use their employer, but choose to come and see you and pay. So if this person is notified ahead of time, then this person doesn't have to miss an hour from work that they're not paid for to come to your office only to realize that the office was closed, because an hour's worth of work to this individual could be an additional meal on the table at the end of the day. And so my question is, are we making sure that these people are notified in time so that they don't have to make these adjustments that can cost them pay at work? not only to pay at work, but then they got to buy the gas to get to come and see you. There's a lot of things that go on with having to leave a job to come and see a probation operation officer. And I just want to make sure that those people are employed, that we're using every tool available to make sure that they stay employed. And the more of them that we keep employed, then the less of those people that we have to see inside our correction facilities.
I agree, and I understand. I think we're doing it. And we can, that's something we can make note of and make sure, because, I think that's our whole goal here working in, hence the word Department of Corrections. When I was doing it to try to help people. And that's making sure they get to work, not inconveniencing them and all that stuff. So we make note of that. I think it's being done, but we'll make note and make sure we put more effort in to make sure that we try to notify people so they won't be wasting time and taking off work.
Senator Hill?
I know that you had said earlier that you need to beef up staff, that the pens that you have are sufficient, I believe is what I heard you say, but we just can't seem to hire the people that we need. If we hired the people that we need, would we not see those offices have to be, or choose to be closed and notes on the doors? Do we have secretaries or assistants that could stay in those offices when the parole officer is out in court or something? I guess, and another thing is, I guess they all have state cell phones, the parole officers, because I get a lot of complaints that they won't answer the phone, even from the sheriff's department and the people working in the sheriff's department, that they won't answer their phones. I know that's a problem in my county, and I know that you are scratching for workers, but we got to do something to tighten up the way they're not responding to people and not having offices open, because we constantly getting complaints. I have the sheriff's department executive assistant pick up the phone and try to call for me or for somebody, and they won't answer the phone. So I've experienced that.
That's a good question. I'm glad you brought it up, which takes me to what we was talking about earlier as far as pay. So that's something I want to address just to show you what we're dealing with. The starting pay for an agent is $33,000 a year. That's what I'm working with. We did a comparison with the surrounding states, Alabama, Louisiana, and all these places that's starting out at $40,000, $45,000 a year. I get applications in, and I never in a million years thought I'd see the day where I'm reviewing applications and I'm actually considering hiring somebody with a conviction to work in law enforcement. That's where we at with Department of Corrections. We cannot continue to operate this way. No, I don't know what you expect to get out of someone when you're paying them $33,000. I was making $33,000 a year 20 years ago when I got in law enforcement. And I'm just being brutally honest. When I hire somebody, send them to the academy, you know who's waiting on them when they graduate? The sheriff's department, the city, the highway patrol. So I'm training people for other folks. And when we do get some people, we're scratching the bottom of the barrel. We're getting what we pay for. I'm just being honest. We're getting what we pay for. So you ask why agents treating people like this or why they doing them like this? It's because the people we're hiring is kind of similar to the person on supervision. Money's not gonna solve every problem, but you gotta compete. At the end of the day, you gotta compete. And if you're not gonna compete, you're gonna keep getting what you're getting.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, I want to thank you
I
all.
wanna follow up.
I'm sorry.
I'm one of the senators that feels like public safety is worth paying for. And I'm happy to try to work with you because I understand. I got friends that own businesses, and I know how hard it is for them to find somebody to work. And I that's across all our agencies,
I appreciate it.
So thank you.
Yeah, I just want to make that point. $33,000 a year, you're not getting care, custody, and control. You may be getting custody, but the care and control is lacking.
I understand that, and certainly you can't, money can't fix everything either, but when you take these jobs and when you all talk to individuals about taking these jobs, then the treatment and being human and treating people with dignity and things like that shouldn't be because I'm not paid enough.
No, you can't teach that, but you still got, you
I
gotta
underst-
pay enough to where you
I-
got a decent pool to pull from. I mean, that's right, and that's what I'm doing. The people, I'm firing people left and right, Senator, and these are people, when it's brought to my attention that someone is doing, mistreating or corrupt, I mean, that on my watch, they're not gonna work for me. So we're gonna continue to be shorthand. So to address the problem, you have to raise the money.
But it's not just your agency that's shorthanded. I think you said earlier that you have to do work in other areas because other areas in MDOC is shorthanded.
And when I say
So
that,
what I'm saying is that I'm not blaming your agency, but I do understand that there are staffing shortages in other areas that are taken away from what you all do because you all happen to go and fill that
Understand
as
your point.
well. So my question again is that if those, and I think maybe Senator Barrett or Senator Fillingham, perhaps it was even Senator Hill that asked the question, you know, if there are people in your department that are only doing their job, not having to do everyone else's job, then there's a possibility that we would see things a little different. Thank you.
thank you.
Any other questions by any of the members of this committee? If not, then we want to thank all of you all who came out today to share information in regards to probation and parole, and we will probably have another hearing in the near future before the session starts, but we will notify you of when we do that. And if you look on the agenda, we also have some discussion with MDOC, MDOT. So I'm gonna allow everybody about a 5 or 10 minute break to stretch your legs or your knees or whatever you might need to. And we'll hear from MDOT, and I invite all of you all to stay and hear what MDOT has to say in regards to prisoners and or incarcerated individuals and how they would like to help move the process along. Thank you.
Thank you.
They're not gonna tell us anything. What they want to do, you know, they having a hell of a time with contractors, anybody else putting grass on the interstates, right of ways and all that. What they wanna do, they've been trying to get with Parole to go ahead and let them start using these people and train them how to cut the grass and hire them as employees when they get out. Borough don't wanna work with them. Good morning again. Good morning again, everyone. We're gonna get started with the second part of our hearings today. And this one probably won't be near as long as the last one, and hopefully a little bit more. I think this one will be more informational than the other. And I thought that this, this started as a conversation between myself and highway commissioners across the state of Mississippi. And it started simply because of some legislation that we've been able to get passed. And one particular piece of legislation in particular is the pilot work release program that we started 2-3 years ago at our Rankin County facility. And we saw how those numbers help with our recidivism rate. And we saw how those numbers of those people that actually participated and completed that program, how they stayed employed. We also heard this morning from Ms. Norman with our parole board that said that she had tracked those numbers and we have some favorable outcomes as a result of that. So therefore, MDOT reached out to me in regards to a piece of legislation that we passed because they understand too the importance of getting good people qualified and gainfully employed. And before we've had hearing where only the private sector came in, well, the private and some public, where we had cities and counties along with private individuals come in and testify as to how that particular piece of legislation is worked out. And again, that led us back to talking with MDOT, actually, who reached out to me and to see what is it that we could do in corrections along with a state agency. That was surprising to me that not only was it just an employer, but a state agency that would like to partner with the state of Mississippi into making sure that we can get individuals who are formerly incarcerated back into the workplace and actually working for the state of Mississippi. So after conversations with MDOT, they sent a representative over, former senator, and I'll let him introduce himself when he takes the podium and to talk to us. And I see former Senator Simmons, who is actually walking through the door right now. So we will have the both of them. Tony, you want to tell him to come on so we can get this started? I know he had to talk to everybody in the building.
I'm still running, he never stopped.
Yeah, that's right, that's right. Brothers of those we need to take. On this commissioner. But again, I just thought that it would be good for us to hear that and to see the importance of the legislation that we've done and how it can be impactful for not just private, but also for our state government entities as well. Good morning, Commissioner. So at this time, I'm gonna pause and let our MDOT presenters talk to this body about what their plans are and how they plan to expand upon previous legislation that we've allowed in the state of Mississippi. Thank you. You have to push the button. And please identify yourself there too.
All right. I've never been on this side. It's a lot easier being on that side, I think. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having me today. I do come representing Commissioner Busby from the Southern District, and we do have our distinguished chair here, Commissioner Willie Simmons here. So what brings me here today, I have to give you a little background on this, is after I started my job with Commissioner Busby, started learning more about Department of Transportation, some of the needs that we have. And like so many of you, when you ride down the interstates, you all ask the questions, man, those things need to be cut, they need to be picked up. So I started asking the questions and trying to learn more about that. And right now we have about 100 vacancies. Oh, okay. All right. He wants me to introduce myself. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm Tony Smith, former state senator, represented District 47, which was down Pearl River Stone and Jackson County back in the day. I served from 12 to 16. Senator Hill and I were elected that same time, and it was an honor for me to serve in the Mississippi Senate. Was able to accomplish a lot of neat things, but also feel your pain of the things that you have to deal with. So, I do thank y'all for letting me come and speak to you. But the story and where I came from to get to where I'm at today, I was actually out cutting the grass one day on Highway 53, and I was just sort of thinking, and I said, what if we could figure out, I guess I left out a key part. I did serve on the Mississippi Parole Board for 3 years up until May of 23. And one of my distinguished colleagues back here, Julia Norman, served with her. So I guess that puts the whole puzzle together. Former state senator, parole board member, a business owner. I do better barbecue than the chair most of the time. We have a little challenge here. But so it got me thinking, how can we address some of the needs that we have in the Department of Transportation? And coming from the parole board side, I always knew that when we got someone ready to parole, they had to have a job. They needed a place to live. They had to have certain things in place. They needed a driver's license. And I saw a lot of the stuff isn't happening. And so these guys get ready to be paroled, they were facing obstacles. Well, I got to thinking about this, and I'm like, well, we've got a big shortage over here at Department of Transportation in the maintenance field. We need people who can run tractors, who can work those maintenance crews. They need a CDL driver's license. And as I got to talking about it, they're already doing a CDL training, I believe, in Parchman. So you can already get a CDL. We have tractors at all these big facilities. Why can't we start a training program that would prepare these guys to learn how to run a bush hog? And that could be part of this work release program. The Senate Bill 2445, I believe, is the bill that you were referencing earlier. When I reached out to Senator Barnett about this, he started telling me about this bill, and I'm like, well, we sort of have the infrastructure there. We just need to create the partnership somehow. I reached out to Senator Simmons, I reached Commissioner Simmons now, Commissioner Caldwell, and Commissioner Busby, and they all three said, go for it. I think it's a great idea. We need employees. So, what if we could take nonviolent offenders, non-sex offenders that are on the verge of being paroled, we get them in a work pilot or work release program where they can begin to learn how to do this work. They can start earning their money while they're going to the job. And as in the Senate Bill 2445 says, I'll remind y'all, out of the money they're paid while they're still incarcerated, 25% of that would go to support any dependents they may have. 15% of the earnings would go to administrative fees. 50% of their money would actually go into their savings accounts. So when they're released, they've got a little money in their pocket, and the other 10% would be for incidental expense that they may have while they're still incarcerated. So to me, it seems like a win-win opportunity. There's a gentleman that I got to talk to when I was on the parole board. He was in the concrete business in Louisiana. They had worked out a program with the Louisiana Department of Corrections, and they were getting their parolees, they were coming over, getting their CDLs, they were putting them on concrete trucks. According to his story, they turned out to be some of their best employees because it was a condition of their parole. They had to report, was part of their condition. And those guys were making upwards to $70,000 a year after they were there for a couple of years. So what I do know is most people that are incarcerated, the vast majority are drug related. So I know that when we parole them, what are they going to do? They're going to go to work at McDonald's or wherever, making minimum wage? Well, I've made the comment myself, if I were in that situation, I'd probably go back to doing what I was doing, making me more money. And so what we want to do is break that recidivism. We don't want them to be revoked back into the system. So why not let's add the state work together, two departments come together, and let's form a partnership where we're going to take some people that are qualified, that will go through that training, and then become an employee when they get out of incarceration, their parole, they could work for MDOT, not be part of MDOC. And so right now, if they have a CDL, they start out around $30,000 a year. State benefits, insurance, the retirement. If they do not get the CDL, it's more around 27,000, I believe, is the starting wage. So it just seems to me like it would make sense that two state agencies like that would let's talk to each other and see if we can't work this out. And I think we've got the infrastructure to work with Senate Bill 2445. Now that sort of only relates to regional jails. I've talked to our sheriff in Pearl River County, David Allison, talked to Simpson County Sheriff. We've got local sheriffs who would be willing to accept some of these inmates and who would transport them to the maintenance facility of MDOT, pick them up and bring them back. So we have some people willing to do that. And so I would think if we could inquire more, we could find enough that we could at least try a pilot program with this, and let's see how it goes. But it seems to me like if we could begin training that inmate while they're still incarcerated, get them into the work release program, let them start earning money, preparing themselves to get out and to be successful men and women in our state instead of going back to the ways that brought them into incarceration. So that's sort of my idea. And I don't know if we necessarily need more legislation, Chairman. I think it's just, let's push this thing and maybe open it up to a few more, let's get outside of the regional jail, maybe into some of the county jails possibly, and see if that would be some thoughts. And Commissioner, I don't know if you would have some thoughts to add to that. He had shared some information with me I was not aware of, that he had already done some legislation prior to me being in the Senate. So would you like to come and share some of that, Commissioner?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. It's always great to be able to come back here and to speak to you all. But Senator Smith, now he's retired and came to work. I think the Department of Transportation, anytime you get ready to lead the legislature, Senator Smith and Representative Busby and myself is an indication that you can come work for the Department of Transportation. So we're looking for some good applicants. But I think this would be a good opportunity for us to work collectively with the Department of Correction. When I was in correction many, many years ago, we started a pre-release program, and that program helped get inmates. As a matter of fact, one of the first placements that we had was with an inmate going to Ingalls. And that person became a very good employee for Ingalls and did well. And then we just did it kind of all over the state. So if we can work with the Department of Correction, we have a lot of vacancies. We have a total of 2,700 jobs within the Department of Transportation. Our Tech 1s and Tech 2s, kind of at the low end, Senator Hill and Senator Chassenall, and you, Senator Burnett, and others worked hard together in trying to get more money into the hands of those individuals, because 4 years ago, our Tech 1s and Tech 2s was making $9.50 an hour or less, working out in the weather McDonald's after COVID started paying more money than we were paying. But we have been able to address that thanks to you all for being supportive of giving us dollars and allowing us to utilize some of those monies to help bring the salaries up to where we are now, a little bit more competitive. And we are not losing employees as much as we were, but we do have a lot of vacancies. And I think this could help us fill that void. So thank you for giving us time, and we'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
I have a question, and neither of you can answer this question. So if I'm not wrong on Senate Bill 2445, where we expanded it to regional jails as well as our state facilities, to be able to find employment for these individuals. So basically what you are saying right now is that if we could get you all these people, then these individuals, then you all will be willing to put them to work. Is that correct?
I believe so. I think if they are willing to do the training and to be prepared to fulfill it, they would be treated just like any other MDOT employee. There would be certain expectations of them. And if they don't fulfill, then, you know, I was speaking with legal yesterday. In a situation like this, they're treated exactly like an employee, the same rights. And also they suffer, if they don't do the job, they can also be terminated. So, you know, it would be a real job.
Okay, second question is, have you all reached out to MDOC and expressed to them that you all would like to see this partnership? And if you have, what was your response? And if you haven't, then how can we help with that?
Well, in the very beginning, I knew that it would take, you know, partnership with MDOC. So I did reach out to Commissioner Kane and Becky Curry on the House side. So we had conversations there. I think my first conversation, he seemed to be really open to it. But as we kept trying to push and get a little deeper, then I don't know if he's still there. But I think we still need to investigate that and to see if that's something that we can bring them to the table. And
okay, and I asked that because, you know, MDOC do have inmates that are serving their time like at county jails. And so my question is that if we have some that are already involved in or have completed the CDL portion of it, then could those be the candidates that could be released to a county jail that's near a MDOT facility that you all could use these individuals? So therefore, the transportation to getting them to and from work wouldn't necessarily be a MDOC task, but it'll be left up to that local sheriff to get them to your facility in the morning and pick them up in the afternoon.
I think we would
from
have
work.
two approaches that we would take and want to take. The first one is, again, sitting down with Commissioner Kane and his staff to see what offenders would fit into the category that we were looking for. And that would be the pre-release kind of offenders who could come and work for us as offenders, continue to be assigned to the Department of Correction. And that would be, again, on those individuals who are short, ready to get out, given an opportunity, as Senator Smith indicated, to be trained to work for us. Now, we have a CDL program ourselves that we send out with Tech 1s and Tech 2s through. Matter of fact, Tech 1s, and once they complete the CDL, it puts them as being eligible for a promotion to go to Tech 2. After going through the first phase of it, and even some of those offenders who would be ready for release, it's a possibility that we could look at them and get them into our HR, Human Resource Department, and go through the interviewing process to see if they would fit into actually becoming employees of the Department of Transportation, because they have had an opportunity to be trained prior to being released, and puts them in a better position to be ready to go to work upon coming into the agency. So we'd have kind of two tracks that we could look at, but we need to sit down and talk to Commissioner Kane and the other, and the commissioners and the Department of Transportation, Human Resource Department, Terrence Yarbrough, to see how we put all that together to make it work.
And Commissioner, do you think that if there's a possibility of, you know, it's September now, and our legislature session starts in January, if there's a way for us to, I guess, to put this on the fast track, and there's a way that it can make it work, if there's any type of legislation that has to be done, so this is something that that we should be asking for immediate release. And I say that because, you know, we understand that the grass cutting season starts around March or April, somewhere in May. So if there's some individual, there's a way where we could start this process, the sooner the better. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir. So what we do now that we've come before you, and I did bump into Commissioner Kane on my way in, and when I told him where I was coming and what our purpose, he said he looked forward to us having more conversation about, because he has an offender population that he wants to be activated and doing things. So we'll have a meeting with him and our engineers, district engineers, to make sure that we can field them into our district engineers. And we have 6 districts,
yes,
all over the state. So we can look at that based upon Commissioner Kane's reaction and his readiness with offenders to be able to be placed into those programs. Our mowing contracts are normally kicked off, or like you indicated, put in place around March, February, March, and they start cutting grass in April, late April, May, and do it through September. But we need to start the process now of looking at how we can feed individuals into that system. Wouldn't you say?
Thank you. And I'm glad you said that, Senator. I keep calling you Senator, but Commissioner.
You can call me anything you want to, Mr. Chairman.
But you know, I'm reminded of an old saying a dear friend had of mine who's passed away now. You know, his old saying was, you know, when it's all said and done, there'll be more said than done. And I'm just hoping that this is not the case now, where we are talking and you're talking to MDOC. I want it to be more done than said. And I can't thank you all enough from being from a state agency that realized the importance of getting people to work regardless of what their background was.
Well, we think it'll be a win-win for everybody. It's MDOT, MDOC, and MDOT, MDOT. The marriage, the courtship, but us coming together and putting the inmates to work prior to them becoming ex-offenders will be good for them. And if we're able to get them into the work program, as Senator Smith described, where they're able to get some kind of compensation, a little money to invest so that we get ready to get out, they have it. And then if we can bring them into the system as full-time employees, it's going to help us fill vacancies that we have. It's going to give the offender, or ex-offender now, an opportunity to go to work, and he or she will become a taxpayer as opposed to a tax burden in correction, but they become a taxpayer with transportation. That's going to be beneficial to that offender, ex-offender, and their family, and the state as a whole. So again, we see it as a win-win, and we'll work with Commissioner Kane on some other issues, and we think we'll have an opportunity to be able to sit and have some good conversation to put together a plan that we can bring back to you, perhaps even before you go into the session or soon after you go into the session, to let you know how we plan to roll it out come 2025.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do we have any questions from anyone on this committee?
Thank you all for your time.
Yeah, I know this wasn't a long hearing or anything, but again, the purpose of this was so that the members of this committee and others could hear that, you know, that when we have that type of genuine, concern from other agencies that want to partner with other agencies based on the legislation that we've done, I think this only, proves that Mississippi is ready to, as the governor said, we're open for business. And we're trying to make sure that even those who are incarcerated has an opportunity to be part of that business model that we want to have in Mississippi. And I think it also creates the environment, that once incarcerated, then you don't have to, then that's not where you end up at, because there's opportunities out there if they take advantage of those things. So thank you all for coming. And I can promise, on this side of the aisle, as the chair of corrections, then, and my committee, that we're here and ready to assist and to make this possible as soon as we possibly can. So again, thank you all and thank everyone for
It
coming
could
out to our
could
hearings.
also be a benefit to my good friend Julie Norman, the parole board, because if we are able to say we can put them in a job, when they're paroling someone, it may be, and give them an incentive to look at paroling that person, because they know they go into a good job that they're going to be able to support themselves and their family. So,
Exactly.
and if she's going to do that, then y'all make sure y'all give her everything she needs.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you all for coming. This concludes our meeting for today. Thank you.